Welcome to Self-Perfected.
Rusty.
Your mic is
My problem is my camera is way down here.
now we can definitely see all the reading research that you have.
Let's see. Let me put my mic on my other computer.
Also, your mic.
How
was
come you're not in
very
the
good.
studio today, Cam?
Because I have air conditioning in my office.
Oh, you were sweating.
That's the determining factor.
Profusely.
I
the
didn't want to
last
do it
time?
last week. Yeah, they didn't have the air conditioning on. I was like, nope, not doing that.
All right, we're
Oh, I was
When I
gone
walk-
last week.
Yeah.
What'd you
What
guys
the
do?
hell
Did
were
you
you?
tell them all
Where
the
the-
secrets?
Yeah.
What?
I
Yeah,
told
we
him all your
the
secrets.
Told them all the secrets.
All your secrets.
Nice. Which ones?
What All the good ones.
Yeah, Mitchell
Ooh.
at night, he's just a monster. I don't know.
So for those who don't know, Mitch went to Davos.
You know that Young Leaders program, Global Leaders program that
Yeah.
Justin Trudeau is in, as well as long time. And you know, if you can visualize it with your mind, it will happen.
Hey, I know what we can talk about.
Yeah,
We can talk about how to actually raise the vibration of the planet.
Ooh, that sounds great.
Let's do that.
Yeah. That's good. That's good because that's such a misunderstood concept.
Okay.
I mean,
so-
let's talk about the vibration and what all that actually means and so forth. What are you gonna say, Jake?
Yeah, let's talk about where the vibration
wait.
is right now.
And real quick, how's my mic?
The vibration of your mic could get higher.
It could be higher.
Okay.
You could be louder.
Yeah, definitely higher.
Yeah, raise your vibration of your mic.
Is it my vibration? How's that?
Hmm.
Raise
A
my
little
vibration.
better. Do a little more though.
Okay. How's that? Is that good?
Yeah,
That's
that's
okay to
good.
me.
It sounds a little
Nice.
hot. But yeah,
See, God,
It sounds a little what? It sounds a little what, Drake?
a little hot.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Guys.
Okay.
How's that? How's that?
Go ahead.
What? Okay. What I think would be good.
And there
to
you go.
start
That's
with-
that. No. That's the lesson that everybody
was it.
needs to take away. That's it.
Okay.
Nice
Go back and watch
What,
that part.
what I
Agreed.
think would be helpful to start with, or at least hit on at some point, is for us to address when we talk about physical and energy and like what is reality made out of. Because a lot of people, especially in the New Age movement and all that, and people into Abraham and the Jinn material and all that stuff, they're like
I'm into
so
Abraham.
convinced that everything is energy, and then this physical world is completely an illusion. And I'm not. I guess I would say I'm speaking on behalf of all of Jinn. I'm just saying from a lot of the conversation I've had, this is what people tell me anecdotally.
That's
I know
just
Abraham,
every
for sure.
spiritual person. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like this reality is just an illusion. We're made out of love and light, whatever that is, and we're here having this physical experience because there's different densities of vibration. So I think that would be like a good point to address, because I'm sure that no matter what we say, if that's not addressed, those tricky people and their tricky egos will go, yeah, but they were talking to me. You know, I know some secrets they don't know.
Okay, so first
Yeah.
off, what is light? That's a good question.
What is light?
Yeah. Like actually from like the perspective of somebody who's like, we're made of love and light. Like, what are they thinking light is even? Like, because I can remember when I was really into just like straight up Abraham, nothing else, like don't even talk to me. And light to me was just like, it signified like just kind of like divineness and godliness and like just spirituality, just like it represented like basically like, oh, the white light, like there's something sacred about white light that it's just like that's where information is flowing through like white light channels, and that's just, if everything was just in light. Like it would just feel amazing. I thought,
Mm.
I don't know. That's
Yeah.
the way I look
Yeah,
at
yeah,
it.
that was where I was coming from too, because I was like reading all these books on Buddhism and how if you meditate for a certain amount of time or you do these certain things, all of a sudden you have this like moment experience where you and this white light merge. And then you hear about the death experience, right? Where apparently these people, when they die, they go to the light. And so
Yeah.
you will infer that then, okay, everybody who's not here is hanging out in the white light unless they're bad and then they're in hell or whatever, right? You have your different dogmas.
Which is the red light, you know, and
Right? And then blue light, we have to block the
So-
blue light.
You're in the
Because
red
that
light
was also
district.
getting into
You just become a prostitute.
biohacking. Yeah.
You're the
You know, red
prostitute
light-
though.
The
You
blue
just don't
light
know it.
district is the trans section. Did you know that?
Well,
Yeah. yeah,
Blue light
okay.
district.
because you know,
Yeah.
Oh, they're going to be
Vibrationally-
offended by blue blockers. They're gonna be offended.
vibrationally,
why
red
you
light
need
has a
blue
lower
blockers.
vibration than blue light. So we're advancing on the vibrational. Wow. If blue light is the reflection of trans and all that stuff, then that means that that is the reflection that we're raising our vibration. And maybe that's what people mean. If I raise the vibration from red light district type shit, ludicrous, we in the red light district, to now we're in the blue light district. Because that's higher on the electromagnetic spectrum, higher frequency.
It's definitely a
Wow.
spectrum. You
And
know, what's
a lot of
weird is you
people
don't
are
have to
on.
do all the meditation. You just chop your wiener off.
But yeah, but what if you don't have
It's super simple.
then you flip
Wait,
your
that raises your vibration?
You're ahead of the game. Then you chop your boobs off.
gotcha.
There you go.
Whatever you got on the front,
Just
chop
drop.
Everything needs to be flat on the front.
top
That's-
down needs to be flat. Well, unless you chop your wiener off, then you got to put the top on. It's like you have to have some kind of balance. But it has to be the opposite.
Yeah, balancing mechanism. That's what we talk about when we're talking about balance. Oh.
Like when I think of like how I would have felt about the light, it's like I imagine like walking into like darkness and you're just like radiating out and like it just like you're like powerful. You're just like making stuff happen. Like that's what it means. And the thing is, it's this vague word that it's not actually ever defined. It's like everyone's just kind of assuming they all know what it means.
Mhm.
Everyone's like participating in this like emotional
Like even love,
understanding. Yeah.
right? Even love, it's like, oh, but you know what love is. You know, it's like, but does everyone actually have a clear definition of the word love? And like, that's why when we talk about it, it's like, well, what does it actually mean? Like, what does it mean to actually love somebody?
Hey,
You know? Yeah.
when you said like walking into a dark room and like just radiating light, that's like every story that you've heard of every religion is like, let there be light or whatever, or like, you know, the white light, and or God spoke to somebody and just bathed them in light, or they were blinded by the light, whatever, right? And it's like, to a certain degree, like what does light represent for like a child, right? It's like, oh, I can see, you know,
Right.
that's really just like, I think that the basic what's being impulsed within everybody is
It's just playing on your fear of the dark. And
yeah,
then
like
oh,
fear of
I
the
can see
dark,
stuff. Okay, cool. I'm safe. Like,
maybe more understanding, as in
Yeah.
like representing more understanding about the universe, about the world, about spirituality, etc.
But then how do you meditate and raise your vibration to get a better understanding of something? That's not how developing an understanding of something works.
It comes from God. Okay, shut up.
All right. It's
Well-
like stop asking questions.
Because also, when we look at the world, right, there's the sun, and so much of life on Earth, I mean, debatably all of life on Earth wouldn't be here if there wasn't the sun. So in that
Right.
there's a whole wrench in the thing too, right? Because then you're like, well, I'm like a sun, and I'm like giving, right? So
But what does the sun get back? Like other than just being there and having its expression as, oh yeah, it probably has its own universe, and it's like it's partying, like hanging out, and you just don't even see it. I guess I don't know. The whole
maybe
idea
that's
is
where God
actually
lives. in the story, you know,
sun.
where God's like
That's
in
where
the-
Jesus lives. Sun, sun.
Oh yeah,
Come on, guys.
son.
The thing is, like, if you really look at it, the whole thing is so childish. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's such a
Mm.
childish, immature way of looking at reality. That's all it is. And I mean, it's hard to explain to somebody who, because reality is all you have to do is be self-honest, and it doesn't, and then you see through it. Because if you're sitting here going like, okay, I just need to vibrate and vibrate higher. It's like, how do you do that? Well, I just have to think positive and focus on what I want. Well, what do you want? How many people are actually clear on what they want?
And
Like, do you actually want a world that's best for everybody? Because how many people actually want that? And do you have to want that? And if not everybody wants that and they're not all vibrating that, then how the fuck will you ever, how is it ever going to be coordinated and work out? So it plays into this idea that like everybody is their own individual creator. And yet at the same time, everyone hides behind the fact of, well, I'm here to make the world better. I want to shine. I want to raise the vibration of the planet. It's like, you're just, okay. If somebody's been programmed, let me ask you a question. Who programmed everybody to want to raise their vibration? Was it the person saying, I'm here to help you raise your vibration?
yeah.
No.
mean-
This whole
don't
raise
know
your
where it even
vibration
came
shit
from.
has been right, but it's like somewhere,
Who started
somewhere. Right, but
Yeah.
it's like the point is it's been in consciousness, it's been in our reality for a while. It's a new age movement. You can trace it back. There's like a whole thing, right?
Oh, I thought you
So-
meant like
Oh yeah, it's a whole
like because
it? The
That's
hippie
what they're getting at.
movement in the 60s?
no, it
Right.
well, it might have come from that, but it's like the Course in Miracles guy.
don't
You ever
know.
hear about that?
There's a lot of points. I mean, I asked the
I think
question
it's a
rhetorically.
woman.
when you ask like when you ask like who impulsed you with wanting to raise your vibration, the thought it was like the first time I ever heard of that was like The Secret, right? And those were
The first time
people-
you heard of it, yeah.
that's the first time I heard of it.
But
and-
they were
and-
already playing on the point of people. It's
Who
just
already
like the
wanted
next
that.
step. Like, for
Mm.
example, what my point was is when you go to church and the preacher's talking about you have to love God and serve God and be and God loves you for who you are and like all these things they're saying. Is that the person who taught you about God actually?
Probably
Like, is
not.
that the person who invented the concept and like got everyone to be aware of that
No,
vocabulary?
definitely not.
Or are they just exploiting the fact that a lot of people already have that vocabulary?
Okay, I see what you're saying now. Yeah.
So
So
it
true.
sounds like the person's so fucking unique because, oh, they're here to help raise the vibration. It's like they're just playing on the fact that everybody's bought into that.
That's so good.
It's just like with all the stuff with the pandemic, like everyone's bought into the idea of vaccines, getting sick, fear, pandemic. Like, who taught you about pandemics? If you really look at it, it's movies.
Movies for sure.
Right.
So they're like,
Wow.
oh, let's use this word. Because if we use this word, people will do what the fuck we want.
That's what happened in the movies.
Right. Well, but you
Damn.
said like the
This is
fear's
the
already
ultimate
man.
marketing.
same thing with nuclear war. Where did you hear about that? Like movies, fucking like all kinds of shit, right? So if I just start talking about this is a possibility, then you're like, oh shit, I got it's like, but you just know that's a huge fear of yours. The other person knows it's a huge fear of yours, or it's a desire or whatever it is. So it doesn't make the person actually fucking know anything just because they're using those words.
You know what's funny is like
Mm. It's a really good point.
like how all these words are like really vaguely defined.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Like
Go ahead.
I mean, it feels as if like the world right now is being run by people who have really vaguely defined words, and they're like vaguely defining every word now for everybody. So like,
Mhm.
Well, you know, it's a
Uh,
great point. Okay, this will be a fun experiment for somebody who is willing to do it. Do one of these like man on the street things at some spiritual event, or go around the different spiritual communities and be like, what is light? What is love? And like get them and then really press them on the point. Get them to define it clearly. Because it's like this whole thing, like, what is a woman? It's like the person's not going to be able to answer you because they don't want to define it in very specific, clear terms. Because
I think the point is always like, it's not something that it is like, it's the ultimate point. It's just like, you can't logically define it. You're limited. if
Right,
you're
right. You
going
can't
that's
put
my
it in words.
point.
your words.
But that's not a valid because how are you gonna bet all your fucking cards of like the whole mess in this fucking reality, plus my existential future, like the possibility of me continuing to exist after this life, plus me getting what I want in this life, like everything about your entire existence of being and everyone's entire existence of being, you're betting it on these few words that you can't even vaguely define.
Right. That's lack of vocabulary, because you can't,
Right.
it's like you can't put yourself there to, okay, they talk about
The
God,
fact that you're
right?
okay with words that are vaguely defined and basing things on it, that shows your total level of vocabulary. What were you going to say, Mitch?
Right. Well, because
It's
it's
a
like
lot of hope.
they talk about God being omniscient and omnipotent and all of that. And it's like
Omnipotent.
Omnipotent and omniscient.
Yes.
Omniscient.
You
'Cause,
are
like,
the sheep.
you Drake, you need to make more of those videos. That'd be funny. You could act like that, and then you could go to the spiritual things with the cameraman and interview people. That'd be
Just
so
talk
fun.
like that and people won't bother because
What
you're
do
that
you mean,
character.
like,
They'll just do
I
whatever
am
you say.
heavy. You are light. I am heavy.
But yeah, like that is just the lack of vocabulary that people have, and then it's that bias toward feeling, because they're like, oh, on the inside I feel good or safe. Kind of reminds me of like a kid, right? Like when a baby's born and then they're like crying because they just like want their mom and that comfort, and then you give it to them and they're like, oh, I feel good now. That's like what this
It's
is.
pretty well described.
And did most people really get that?
No,
No.
Mm,
They didn't really
no,
get it.
not when they needed it.
probably like no kids.
Oh, dude, okay. I
Except
want to tell you
for
about
the
this
kids in
book
his
real
community.
quick. All right. So, I've been reading the whole like Isaac Asimov Robots series of books, right?
Mhm.
So, if anyone is going to read them, I highly suggest to read them in order, even though they're not like a storyline per se. Each one refers to context that you built in the first one. So, anyways, the one we're reading right now is called The Naked Sun, SUN. All right, and it's really cool because the whole premise of the story is there's Earth, and then there's the outer worlds, which are planets just out there in the galaxy that have been colonized by humans like over thousands of years. Okay. And on Earth, and it makes sense if you read all the books, the context of Earth is they really don't like robots. And it's not that they don't, they don't like them, because it's like they're going to take our jobs. They're not human. There's all this sort of like anti-robot sentiment in Earth culture. And in this series of books, like all of people on Earth live in these huge domes, which are mega cities with like tens of millions of people. And they never see the sunlight. They never see the open air. They just live in like a giant building that's the size of New York, but it's one building with rooms and everything. And there's like this hierarchical class structure, like where you get certain privileges based on your classification. But they have this intense, and what's interesting is like the lower rent housing is closer to the surface of the dome. So the closer you are to the air, to the outside air, that's considered like lower class. So the further you are in, where you're more insulated or isolated from the outside. So in other words, they've built this sort of fear and discomfort and just like cultural sort of like, you don't go outside. So no one would ever go walk around outside, like with the trees and the sun. So you never see trees, you never see anything living. There's no living animals. Like everything is grown from yeast, like all the food, it's very synthetic. All the air is conditioned and circulated. Like if you went outside, you'd be like, oh, they'd feel disgusted. Like there's this just open air. It's not even filtered or anything. Like they would feel disgusted by it. Like that's how the culture has developed to that point. So there's a detective from Earth, which long story short as to why, but he goes to another planet, which no Earth person ever goes to another planet. But he goes to this planet, which has only, it's like the size of Earth, but it's only got 20,000 people on it. And each person on this planet, each citizen has like an estate that's like a small estate would be like 950 square miles. That wouldn't be like a really big estate. So they're like massive estates, like huge, right? Imagine a whole planet where it's divided up amongst 20,000 people, right? And for one person, there's 1,000 robots. So it's like the total opposite of Earth culture in that regard, right? And the robots do everything. Like you have these controls everywhere where you just like push a button and the robot's there. Like whatever, like you want a glass of water, the robot comes and brings you a glass of water. like you don't have to do anything yourself. And people are not like fat and slovenly or anything. Like it's not like they're lazy because they're very productive. They do stuff, but it's like, but they never have contact with each other. It's really fascinating. They have this concept called viewing, right? So basically you could think of it like the metaverse, but you don't have to put on anything. And basically, like I could be sitting in my room, kind of like we're doing right now, but imagine instead of seeing someone on a computer screen, like I can actually see you sitting over there in the room. And it's like holographic,
Also,
high
like Star
definition.
Wars.
I guess so. Yeah. But it's like the way it's projected, half of my room would look like your room. So there would just be like a line where it's like my room ends and your room now begins.
That's pretty cool.
And then they have a mobile version where it's like I can walk around and your little sphere will like kind of follow me around so we can like go on a walk together. So basically they have zero physical contact with anybody. And he has to learn this because he's like in their culture trying to solve this murder. That's why he's brought there. Because like crime and murder never happened. So they had the first murder in like 300 years in their entire history. And it's really interesting because like he's calling at first he doesn't even know that because like he's talking to this guy. He's like in this huge like multi fucking mansion building that they give him, right? That's going to be his condo or his building or his house to stay in while he's there visiting this planet. And he's like, he's supposed to meet with somebody. So he goes into this room and there's the guy sitting in the chair and he starts talking to him. And then after their conversation's over, the guy disappears and he's like, what the fuck? And the robot that's with him is like, oh yeah, like he wasn't actually there. You were just viewing him. And he was like, oh shit. Like, okay. Like he didn't even know. Right. So later he's trying to talk to somebody else. And he's like, look, it's very difficult for me to get a real connection with you. I'm trying to talk to you. I need to come actually see you, like come visit you. And then the woman, oh no, actually, hold on, let me back up. So there's this scene where he's talking to this woman who's like the wife of the guy who was murdered. And she's getting out of the shower. Okay. And she like turns around, she's totally nude and she's like really attractive. And he's like, what the fuck? Like, what's going on here? He's like super uncomfortable with it. And he's like, and the robot understands and he's like asking her, can you put some clothes on? Could you put some clothes on? And she's like, why? What's the big deal? And he's like, you know, he's from Earth. He's not used to that. He's like, but we're just viewing. And she makes this point about how it's like kind of like she would understand if he was there physically with her, like, and she was naked, but the fact that she's not physically there, they're just viewing. So they have this whole culture built around you're not physically there. So it's like, you could just do whatever. It's not a big deal. And he asks, because he's trying to figure out some information, if he can go visit her. And she's repulsed by the idea, like physically disgusted by the idea that he would want to be in the same physical room with her. And so as you go further in the book, you learn about like their culture, and they're like, this one guy agrees to like let him come, and he has to sit like on the other side of the room, and then the guy has to turn his chair away and not look at him. And at a certain point, he runs out of the room, and the guy's like, what did I say? And he goes, and then he calls him, like he starts viewing him, like he like shows holographically, and he's like, what did I say? He goes, it wasn't anything you said. He said, I just started thinking about the fact that we were breathing the same air, like that you were breathing out and I was breathing in. And that air that was in your lungs is going in my lungs. And I couldn't stand it. I had to leave the room. And so I'm bringing it up because, like, one, it really starts to show you like kind of how it's trying to show like the evolution of it, right? And you might wonder like, why would they have evolved like that? And this is really fascinating because so on Earth, it's super fucking crowded. There's like 10 million people in a dome, like in a city, right? And there's really no personal space. And depending on your classification, you don't even get like a personal shower. Like you could have to like, you know, like you ever been like in like a gym or like a big men's like shower room where it's just like the showers, you know, like if you're in a sports team or something like that. Like when I was at the academy
Or in
like,
prison.
Yeah, I guess, or a prison. But like I remember like when I was at the academy, like in the sports facility, there were like these shower rooms where it's just like this pole that has like shower heads that come down, and there'd be a few of those. So it's not like you're in a stall necessarily, right? And I mean, just depends on where you are. Some places had the stalls or whatever, like in our dorms and stuff. But like to get a stall, you have to have a certain classification, right? And this is on Earth. And there's even this point where if you have the stall, they call it a personal, when you go in there, you're still in a room where there's other people. It's kind of like a locker room, and then you have your own personal stall. Like you never look at or speak or acknowledge the presence of any other person in the room. That's like it's like taboo to even like look at the person. So it's like a way of kind of creating it like you're by yourself, even though you're technically not, right? So my point is like, you see how these like cultural patterns develop based on the way the society is structured, and the way they did it like that because they had to have some way where you can work your way up in society and get privileges and so forth. And so on the planet that has only 20,000 people is called Solaria. The reason why they have only 20,000 people is so the main character from Earth is talking to like this sociologist from Solaria, and the guy has this theory he's explaining to him that in any society, human society, you're going to have classes of society, right? You're going to have the people who are at the very, very top, like we call them the 1%, right? And then you have the people kind of in the middle who are like, okay. And then you have the people at the bottom, which are like the total fucking slaves. Okay. And then he makes this analogy to Sparta. Okay. You guys have heard of Sparta, right? They were like this warrior class society in Greece, right?
I've only heard this is Sparta.
Okay. Well, let me give you a little history lesson then. In their society, it was like totally militaristic. And the way they explain it in the book was the reason why is because they had all these slaves, and they knew eventually the slaves were going to revolt, right? Because they're going to be dissatisfied or whatever. So the way that they made it so that they never really had any major slave revolts is the elite class of Sparta was like super fucking highly trained. Like imagine they're all Navy SEALs. So like the slaves are never going to fuck with anybody because they're like, well, we'd have to go up against like the fucking elite fucking Navy SEALs. So we're just never going to revolt. Does that make sense? And they're not giving that training like to the slaves or whatever, right? So that's when you hear about the Spartan, like they're like super elite and shit. That was why, according to this book, right? So what he was explaining in the future in this planet called Solaria is the way they solve the problem. It's because they were like, we don't want to have to fucking sit here and like fucking do military training all our life. Like, fuck that. Like, we just want to do whatever we want to do, you know? So what they did was they just replaced the entire slave class with robots, because the robots are programmed that they can never harm a human, not like a slave. Where a slave can typically, you know, or theoretically they can snap and like you go off or whatever, right? So in Solaria, they had 20,000 humans. They had an elite class in no lower classes, no middle class, nothing. So everybody was elite in the entire society, and they just had thousands of robots that did everything they wanted to do. But that was why they had these weird fucking cultural taboos. You didn't ever want to physically be near somebody because that would prevent you from ever having any sort of like familial sense of like bond, or any sense of bond with like any group. So no groups could ever form that would like try to take down society or fuck with things or whatever. And you would never be interested in having children. And so in the book, even the main character mentioning the word children, the people would get really pissed off at him. And like, just, it'd be like if I was talking about like fucking horses or something. They'd just be like, dude, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Dude, like, just stop right now. Just stop talking about that. Like, that's how even just the word of children or having children or do you have children, they would be like really offended if you were asked, like, do you have children? So like the children, the way they explained it is if an adult dies, they're replaced by a child. So they very carefully control how many, there's only like 150 children alive at any time in the society. And they're like raised in these facilities. And it's really fascinating because when the children are babies, they explain that they have to have these specialized robots that take care of the babies and give them attention. And she was like, yes, children require attention. And she was like kind of like annoyed by even saying it. And he was like, oh, you mean like affection? And she like just ignored him. And he kept saying the word affection. Eventually she was like, can you please stop being so obscene? Like the word affection. She was like, I can say 4-letter words. Love. How about that? Love. Look, I can say words like that too. Like even the word love was like taboo. It was like just like a dirty word. Anything that had to do with physical connection. And so they had to have these robots that cared for the babies and like snuggled them and stuff. Because she said, if you don't, the babies will die. And then they had to let the children became like, you know, toddlers and stuff. They had to let them go out and play in groups physically and run around in the nature and all this stuff. But then over time, they would start to wean them off of physical contact, where by the time you're like 12, 13, 14 or whatever, like you're only interacting with your friends based on like that viewing, like that holographic projection stuff. And then by the time you're an adult, you've been so indoctrinated that you don't ever want to be near another physical person physically. And even like they had to be forced, you had to force people to get married and have kids. There was like, you had to like, and they husband and wife didn't live together. They had their own estates. and they only would physically see each other very rarely, and they were okay with that. It was totally normal. So I'm just bringing it up because what's really interesting, this point of like the slaves could revolt, and that was why they had to be replaced with robots. And you always hear about all this stuff about the depopulation and the elite want to like lower the population and everything. That's why they have wars. That's why all this stuff is being pushed. Like right now, one of you brought up like the Dutch guy, right? You know what's going on in the Netherlands? Have you guys heard about this?
Yeah, they're
I've
not.
heard a little bit with the farmers, but please tell us.
It's from what I understand, they're basically like putting in all these regulations. They're blaming the farmers for using like ammonia and like nitrogen-based fertilizers and stuff, and that's like causing problems in the climate and all this stuff. But I watched this really interesting interview with a farmer, and he said they're always blaming the farmers. It's always the blame cause of everything. He said, but every time we go, they have to go to like a special court. If they okay, so let's say they were like, okay, I found a way to use less nitrogen fertilizer. Okay. Well, in order to do that, because like, okay, let's say the best way to farm right now to get the best yield is to use this type of fertilizer, but they're now banning this fertilizer. And you say, okay, look, I've come up with a way to use less of that fertilizer or whatever. It's a new technology. They would have to go and get an approval to use it, whatever it is. But they said the court they go to always turns them down. He's like, so it's very clear that what they're doing is they're making an impossible situation where it's like, they said in some places it's like 30% reduction in like the amount of like these nitrogen things they can use. Some it's like 60, some it's 80, some it's like 95% reduction. And so they're saying you can't use these like, fertilizers and stuff, but then you can't utilize any new technological methods that would make you more efficient without having to do it. And he said it's very obvious that they're doing it so that the farmers basically go bankrupt. Like they have to just fucking shut down. It's just like with the restaurants, they did the same thing. You put all these restrictions in place to where it's like you have to have like all these new hand washing stations and screens and like like one person at a table and like nobody near them and like all this like crazy shit, and like a lot of restaurants just couldn't handle it. And then they had to switch to like carry out and like all these different things. They didn't have the infrastructure in place for that, right? So it like a lot of people just had to shut down and they just went out of business, right? So they're putting these farmers out of business. And he was saying, and I've heard this is the second or third time I've heard this, is that they're doing it so that basically they'll give up their farmland, the government can take it over, and then they can build apartment complexes for immigrants because they're importing all these immigrants. And I was like, well, why would they need to do that? And he said, like, I forget the exact number, but it was something like, and I could be maybe exaggerating it, but let's say no less than 60, but I feel like it was closer to like 85% of the land in Netherlands is farmland. It was like some very high number. I was kind of surprised. So basically they're like, we can't bring in more people or immigrants, so forth, if we don't have access to this land. And so it's a very coordinated effort to like just shut all that down.
What's the like country's incentive to bring in immigrants, or is it like a UN thing?
To manipulate the voting base.
Yeah, I remember a long time ago, maybe like 2016 or so, I was kind of looking into all this stuff and like the purpose of the European Union, like the kind of the people who created it. Because if you think about it, these things don't just happen by accident. It's just like the World Economic Forum. It's like somebody had an agenda in mind and they started putting things together, and then it grew over time, and then it becomes powerful in a certain sense, right? So like the European Union was another thing as well. And the people or the person behind the formation of the European Union, their whole point was about taking the population in Europe and mixing other populations into it to let's say breed out all of the essentially what they want to do is dilute the population, the white European population.
It's like breed out the potential for like very
for any
strong
competition to go to the top, so that you keep everything. Because if you have people, so the problem is, I know people can get upset about saying something like that because you think that you're saying inherently like people from the Middle East are like inferior or something. That's not at all what I'm saying. But the problem is genetic lines. Like it's like if you don't give someone access to something for a long time, then they're behind. It's not that they're inherently like they can never be at this level. It's just that they haven't you haven't reinforced that over time. It takes time. Like, for example, the white Europeans, it takes time genetically to reinforce certain lines of information and so forth, so that they have certain memory abilities or whatever it is, right? It's just like, it's no different to breeding animals. Like you have certain, like, for example, if you had some like Doberman Pinscher, okay, who you've bred for like 1,000 years or whatever to be super fierce and like feels no pain and like attacks viciously and like is super lean and fast and all this stuff. And then you're like, we're just gonna randomly breed it with a husky
Or Chihuahua.
or whatever. Like definitely the pup is not gonna have. So let's say you keep doing that over time for 1,000 years. What's gonna happen? Are you gonna have fierce Doberman Pinschers anymore?
No.
You're going to have something that's less than that in the context of what it was you wanted it to be. It's going to be mixed with something else. So whether that's valid or not is not my point. It's just when you look into the origins of the European Union and the purpose of it, like from the very beginning, it was to get Europe to the point it's at now, where they're bringing. So this is not like it always feels like it's just some random thing occurring right now, because the way it's like, okay, let's say there's a storm outside, right? That just happened right now. And I'm like, guys, there's a storm outside. This is terrible. And I get you to do something based on that, right? But imagine I already had a plan of something I wanted you to do. Like, I'm like, hey, we need to bring this tractor inside. I need you guys to help me pick it up and move it inside, right? But I was just waiting for that day when the storm happened because I wanted you guys to move that tractor inside. You see what I'm saying?
Wanted
And I
as
could've do it
least
myself.
resistance as possible.
Right.
To help
So
with the tractor.
the crises that are always used seem like so like immediate and just like urgent in everybody's mind, but the plan was all there all along. It's just, okay, whatever crisis can be used, we'll use that to further the plan that we have. So what you're not aware of is the plan, even though it's all written down in books, it's all in videos, all kinds of stuff where the people themselves are saying it. Now I say videos, but traditionally it's in books and so forth, and pamphlets and memos and things like that, documents. But who reads?
Oh, can I?
I
Can I
mean, like,
speak
this is
on
the whole
that?
problem, isn't it? Yeah.
So
I make sure I do, so I know the plan.
I was just telling Asif this, like, you know how you and Mitch did this video like maybe a year or two ago at the beginning of the lockdowns, about why kids can't read, right?
Mhm.
And you're given this example of how kids, like how phonics is taught to kids, and you'll sound out a word and you're like right? I've literally seen this taking place in well, at the daycare that my mom and I operate, right? Where the kids there, like, I've shown them the word cat, and like one particular child was like, oh, the car. And I was like, no, look at it again. And he's like, that's car. And I'm like, so I typed the word car and I show him that. I'm like, well, where is that? He's like, oh, that's car. I'm like, okay, so what's this other word? And he's like, K A K A K A. I'm like, okay, what's the last letter? He's
So you
like,
asked him to spell it, right?
I asked him to spell it. I was like, hey, just what is that word? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, spell it. And he goes, K A.
Oh, you actually said spell.
He's not
You just
saying
said-
the letters of the word.
Yeah.
I said spell, and he's just trying to sound it out.
How
And
old
so
is this kid?
it's just really interesting. He's 6 years old. 6 years old.
Dude, okay, real quick, just let me interject. I want to hear the finish, but just as a contrast, this morning, Max, I was laying in bed with Max, right? And like he had pretty much just woken up, so I was in there with him, and we were joking around about how I have to come do this meeting because he wanted me to do something with him, and I was joking about like getting some food, or it was some silly just dad kind of joke thing, right? And I was joking about meeting, and I was like, oh, is that what you call it? Like if you go and you eat some ham, is it a meeting? Right? And he goes, and he lays there and he goes, well, that's funny. He goes, that's a really good one, Cameron. He goes, it's funny because that's MEATING, but the other one is MEETING. So it's two different meetings. right? And so, which the first one's not even a real word, meeting. I mean, technically, you know what I mean? And he's not even 6 yet.
Yeah.
So that we don't practice spelling with the exception of doing techno tutor, which is 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day, depending on the day, but generally about 30 minutes a day. That's all he's doing. So there's no way you're memorizing the spelling of words you don't even know, or you know what I mean? It's not memorization. But anyways,
Yeah.
that's less than 6.
Yeah. So like just the other day, I just kind of did an assessment of all the kids there who are school aged, right? And
Can I give some context real quick? Do you mind
sure,
about the
yeah,
daycare?
but-
Just
yeah,
so everyone's aware, like Drake's family has like a history of daycares, and now he's developing them into using techno tutor and so forth. So he's been taking that responsibility. And just so people are aware, because they're probably thinking like, why don't you just have techno tutor for them? But it's like a process that you've been developing in there.
right. Um, and they're lower income in this area, which I think is important to mention because it's all the people that people claim to want to help, right? And their version of help is like just giving things and like, oh, we'll have this little seminar for them, or we'll give them some clothes or whatever. But like they really
Okay, here's what I was gonna say is imagine like you had your mission was to raise the vibration of the planet. Okay, and you want to help people. So your idea is raise the vibration, right? And literally the way you actually think the way to raise vibration is to just make people feel good. That's it. So you're thinking if I could just get everyone to like make themselves feel good, that will raise the vibration. Because that's what feeling good does. It raises the vibration, and then everything will start to magically change. It'll be great. It'll be amazing because everyone will be feeling good. That's what we want, right? So you just try to come up with clever ways of people feeling good. You see what I mean? Like it's this belief that if we feel good, everything will work out. That's my point, right?
What we've always told people is like, if you only focus on feeling good all the time as an immediate point, the problem is you won't be able to do the things necessary sometimes because we're in a world where we have consequences we're trying to face. It's like if you had a pile of shit in your room, you're like, well, that doesn't make me feel good to clean that. So let me just go eat a lollipop. And you're like, you still have to come back and face this shit in your room. Right.
So
what
in that book that you were describing, it's like, who is it that is benefiting from everybody not wanting to touch each other and all that stuff? Like there must have been somebody who orchestrated that, who understands the value of physical touch and families and all that stuff. So
that was my point. It's like they wanted to prevent people from ever fucking with the
who's
society.
They? Like, are they're like in a different world, or like they're this on that planet?
In the context of the story,
yeah,
there was a different planet called Nexon, and these Nexonians, they would vacation on Solaria, and it was like kind of like an uninhabited world, but that was really pristine and so forth. So they would vacation there, and then what happened is in Nexon, the population started to grow into the millions. And then this theme in all of these books that the more people there are, the lower the standard of living will be by definition. And that's why they use Earth as that example. It's like this huge, everyone has what they need per se, but it's like
was
every year
the author
population
aware
grows.
that he was doing that, or was that just like a programmed like assumption that he had writing them?
I don't know. You'd have to look into Isaac Asimov, but he's pretty elite. Like I think he's probably like, it's probably a
so, but that's the thing when you say
programming. It's probably a cultural programming.
Like he might actually subconsciously think that,
or even consciously. Yeah, it might be an actual like propaganda to like promote depopulation. You see what I mean? Because you can see that pattern in there. Because in the Earth, they're like, look, population's growing out of control. People have as many kids as they want. They don't do eugenics. They don't, like on Solaria, it's like they choose who's going to be bred together. You don't have a choice. Like your genetics are good with this person's, so you're married now. We're choosing that for you. It's not even about love or any of that kind of stuff. It's like, who do we need to actually replace in the population, and what kind of person do we need there? So it's all very specific. Drake, just real quick, while you were gone, I was bringing up this point because you said, like the kids that you're working with now at the daycares, for example, they're like the kids who the low economic people who you would think people want to help. Those are the people you want to help, right?
Yeah.
And I was just realizing, like, imagine if your idea of helping everybody was raising the vibration of the planet. And your idea of how you do that is just people have to feel good. And if they feel good, the vibration raises, everybody's good. We're happy. It'll everything will magically change. So literally you just go around trying to find clever ways of helping people to feel good.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's in essence what people do, isn't it? It's like, oh, I'll just help you feel good. I'll make this meditation thing. It's like everybody you meet in the spirituality community is always like, I want to make like a retreat center that has like meditation rooms and this, and you're like, oh my
It's
God, it's
true.
not fucking original.
It's true. Okay, so here's the really sad thing about that is like being on like in the field or actually like there with these kids is like just making them feel good is not actually helping them at all. It's not like they can't understand really basic things. And that's if you're not able to understand really basic things, you're gonna have a much more difficult time doing things that the person that's saying, oh, I just want to raise the vibration, like what they see as normal is not something that these kids are able to do. Not because they're
but also like the things that you do, like who wants to meditate intrinsically?
no
Who intrinsically wants to go on a cruise?
yeah.
Like if your life was fucking awesome, why would you ever care about going on a cruise?
yeah.
Why would you care about, like, what makes me feel good is being around people that I enjoy and just like playing together. Like there's really like having
Yeah.
good food and hanging out. Like there's nothing better than that. I don't need someone to entertain me. There's a time and a place, like you go have fun and you watch a movie or something like that. But it's like all of those things are means to an end. And what it's not doing is addressing how do people remove all the shit that's inside of them that's preventing them from just interacting with each other in a way where it's like just being together is the best form of like having fun and feeling good. It's like when we all get together, we experience levels of that where it's like, damn, this is different than just being with people normally, like at some other event or family reunion or something you go to or whatever.
Yeah.
Just because you're in aligned with principle and you've kind of removed a lot of the ego shit, not all of it yet, but even to varying degrees, you see the difference.
For sure.
So it's like, that's actual raising your vibration, although we don't call it that because that's not what it is. Right.
Yeah.
Because that's all just some bullshit anyways. But anyways, you were going to say something about working with these kids and so forth.
Yeah. Basically all of them, that I had the opportunity to sit with, they're all eager to learn. I want to make that clear. They're all eager to learn, but they all very far behind where they should be. And for them, it's normal. And very well, when you talk to their parents are like, no, they're normal. They're like no, they're on track. They're reading just fine, all that. And like, it's really obvious to me.
That's probably what they're
because
told.
Probably, I don't know. But it's really obvious to me, like they're way far behind than even like, I don't know, 5 years ago, just 5 years ago.
Oh,
right?
like you can see the difference between 5 years ago and now, what's considered normal and where people are at in general.
Yeah, with the same subset of people. I'm
Yeah,
not
okay,
even
yeah.
comparing them to another socioeconomic group.
Yeah.
Like
So you can see the difference
same
with just
subset of
that group. Yeah.
people. Yes. Yeah. And it's really like, I'm just kind of like now just extrapolating that out. Like, okay, if that's what's happening here, like what's happening on like the total national level, like, because they're
let's look at the average, like not low economic status, just average middle class child now.
Yeah.
What are they all fucking thinking about and doing right now? There's an epidemic right now of all this trans stuff going on.
Yeah.
And then look at all the media that is being impulsed with them. Like just compare that to 5 years ago. There's a difference there.
And then check this out as well. Like, I don't know if you've been seeing like how on Twitter, I've seen a lot of talk about like recession and how the White House is changing the definition of recession. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was looking at this because someone made a good good point of like they're just changing the definitions of everything. Like they
Right.
changed the definition of women, they changed the definition of vaccine, they changed the definition of recession. Like that's just what they're doing.
Anti-vax.
And right. And like I was looking at it like,
But they're not
wow.
changing. Oh, good. Yeah.
like just this specific point of it's really easy to just right now lie to people's faces. Just fucking tell them it is what I just said it is because I said it is. Right. And that's often how like
Classic parenting technique, by the way.
right. Like it's
Why?
it is
'Cause I said
I
so.
said so. Exactly.
So
Right.
it's a low vocabulary explanation.
It is. It is. And I was just seeing how people are going along with it. So it's like they just blatantly lie about more and more things that you would think are just obvious. And so I was like, even to what you just said as far as like the elite group in this book series where they're they're like repulsed breathing the same air as somebody else. And it's funny because like that's people are right now. It's like they don't want to breathe the same air as somebody else. And young people are being taught that as well. Right. It's like it's just like, oh, this is what kids are learning today and what they're going to grow up with. And this is what old people are somehow already participating in. I don't know how they got there, but they're already like, I just saw someone that I know who's probably in their mid 50s, but they just said like, oh, I just got my second booster. When is this ever gonna end? Then like some other person commented like, I just got my fourth. And then somebody else commented like, you know, it's just gonna be like the flu, like the flu vaccine. We're just gonna have to do this every year. And they're like just accepting of it. Just accepting of it. I'm like, what the fuck? Like
Yeah.
how
Imagine 10
How
years
the-
down the road, 10 years of fucking boosters, what that does to you.
okay, imagine 10 years down the road, these kids who cannot spell the word cat, who cannot spell like really
It's
And-
literal idiocracy.
yes. And I was telling Asif this yesterday. I'm not going to go into like the details, but while we were doing Techno Tutor, it was like they could see the points within them where it's like, oh, you don't have this like down yet. Like, so one kid was like, okay, we're looking at the word blue, and I'm asking him, how do you spell the word blue? And he's like, D I and I'm like, oh, I could see immediately.
You're not even close, dude.
like-
You're way off.
But I could see why he was saying it. I could see
Yeah, why?
exactly because he doesn't know, he doesn't have down the word B or the letter B and the letter E,
Gotcha. Yeah.
and
yeah.
the L,
And the L
is an I.
I. Yeah.
And
yeah.
even the U, like at that point where it's like there's so much confusion going on within him. At that point, the U became an N,
Yeah.
you know? And it was so interesting.
Literally
just-
everything is just backwards.
right. And it's like,
Hey, there was
oh,
something you texted Katie the other day. I think it was like a day or two ago. I don't know.
Hmm.
Did she tell you about this? You
Oh, yeah,
texted
yeah, yeah.
her.
I texted
Remember
her.
what the sentence was? Because I can't
Yeah.
remember.
The sentence is basically like, do you guys have cattle gates?
Right. Do you have
Do you
any
have a cattle gate?
gates?
Do you
Yeah.
have
Do
a
you have a
cattle
cattle gate? And apparently Katie told me Seneca's sitting there with her, like looking at the phone, and she goes, "Why did Drake say, do you have a cattle gate?" She just fucking read that off the text. Right. She's not even 4 years old yet.
Yeah.
And that to us, like, again, like Seneca is very much like a girl. Like, she's not like Max where she's like, oh, I want to make like electronic circuits. Like, she'll play with them from time to time, but she likes to dance and run around and dress up and stuff like that. Like, so you definitely can't look at it and go, oh, well, she's obviously a genius too. Like, because she doesn't even do the genius stuff, like the you know what I mean, the stuff where you're like, oh, look, you just built an electronic circuit, like that's crazy. Like, she's not doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But she can fucking read. And I'm not saying she's not at the same level of intelligence as Max. I'm just saying, or when he was her age. My point is just, with him, it's, I think, easier for people to be like, well, I mean, he's just like this really smart little kid who just knows about engineering and electronics and math and stuff like that, because he talks about that stuff. But like with Seneca, it's like she wants to dance and play and do all this other stuff. So my point being, you can just, it's nothing to do with your inherent innate intelligence, whether you can read or not. The only thing that it gives you an advantage on is if it's not directed and you're not taught effectively with TechnoTutor how to read, then you have an advantage based on your memory ability. That'll give you this slight advantage that seems like a huge difference. But the reality is, what percentage of people even really understand algebra? Like, what percentage of people even really understand physics and like, you know, like actual technical stuff, like engineering and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Very few have that kind of vocabulary.
Yeah.
So even if you're taught phonics, you're not going to actually integrate all of that vocabulary. You're just getting some kind of strategies to sound shit out. So it looks like you can read. But how many people actually like to read?
Yeah.
Like with our kids, if there's a book in the room, they're like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, because it's like how many people like watching movies? Everybody, right? Because it's effortless. That's how reading is whenever you can fucking actually read. You pick it up and just like, I get it. Right? So like with our kids, because they've integrated the vocabulary effectively with TechnoTutor, reading is effortless. They don't have to sit there. The only reason they won't know something is that they just haven't integrated that word. They don't know it. What's fascinating is because they use TechnoTutor, their mind automatically starts seeing patterns that the stuff that you try to teach kids with phonics, my kids can do it effortlessly.
Yeah.
So you don't have to teach that stuff if you just integrate it effectively. The mind will pick up those patterns.
And it's so interesting, like that effortlessness is needed in order to participate in this society. like if you have complaints about society, if you're like, you know, they're always telling us what to do, or, you know, we're being controlled or whatever, it's like you have to be able to, like you were alluding to earlier, like you have to be able to read and see this is exactly what they said they were going to do.
Right.
Versus like versus about like I don't know what you mean, Asif, but versus when they're just lying to you directly, blatantly, and
It's
you can't
like,
even see it.
it's like when you're reading and you can't process everything effectively, like the kid who can't even process the letters. You're struggling so hard to put that together that by the time you get that word, you've lost all of the meaning of the rest of it. So it's like you might be able to follow a certain amount of what you're reading, but the big picture, like for me, here's my point. When I'm reading these Isaac Asimov books, I'm just reading them aloud to the kids. So I'm not reading it multiple times. I'm not going back and rereading. I'm just reading it one time. So everything I'm describing to you, the story. So imagine, you see how I'm just telling you the whole fucking story, like in detail, every detail of it. I can recall it and I can tell you the meaning behind it. I can tell you the big picture, how it relates to other stuff. That was me. I'm not sitting around thinking about it. That was what I was thinking and understanding while I'm reading it out loud to the children.
Right. Yeah.
So my point, just contrast that with the average person when they're reading, they are losing all of that. So like when you're in school, remember when you're taught how to, like, when you read a book and you write essays and shit and you analyze each passage. Do you remember how fucking boring that was in school?
Yeah.
When you'd read a book and you'd get through like one page and they'd read a passage and they'd like teach you about this. And I'm thinking, you should just be getting all of that automatically. You should already have 5 different ways of interpreting it in your mind, from connecting the dots of everything. And it should just be automatic, and you're reading and you're processing it and you're thinking about it also on top of that. And you're in like that. So you can't teach a child to read and think critically. It's a natural consequence of having an effective vocabulary where the words are integrated effectively. You do it automatically. And so in our system, we try to teach those things artificially without doing the other part. It's impossible. And so you give all these strategies and then people think, oh, I learned that stuff, so I can do that.
Yeah.
And then they specialize, they get a degree because they can kind of memorize shit. They get a job. So now they have a degree and a job and they think they fucking know something. And now they think they're smart and they think they're educated because they have a degree.
And those people think that they are smarter than other people. And this is why some people get it and some people don't, because some people are smarter and some people are not. And they're not really taking into account just like the foundation that somebody gets. I'll tell you this because Asif wants me to tell you. there is a parent who brought their kid in. Kid is 6 years old, and I'm sitting there with the kid, and I'm asking him, "What's this letter? What's that letter?" And he doesn't know like a lot of letters. He's 6 years old, and I told the parent, I said, "Hey," when I saw her again, I was like, "Hey, I was noticing your kid doesn't know the letters, right?" And she's like, "Oh no, he knows." And like, "No, he doesn't." She's like, "No, he knows." I'm like, "Not the lowercase ones." And she's like, "Hmm." And I'm like, "Fuck was
We just
that?"
write in all caps.
I was like, I was trying to tell her, like, your kid doesn't.
It's like you understand everyone's gonna think he's yelling at them all the time whenever he texts
and the
people.
kid speaks like a baby. Like he speaks like a baby, like mispronounces a lot of words and like this kind of baby speak. Like, I'm gonna tell you,
Yeah.
I'm like, anyway,
Yeah.
the next day my mom's talking to her, and my mom's, so he doesn't recognize, and she's like, "Oh, recognize? No, he doesn't recognize." And I'm like, "What?" Like, when I said he doesn't know the letters, like, and she, no, he knows the letters. Oh, but he doesn't recognize them. He doesn't recognize them. And so, like, to her, knowing the letters is like he knows the alphabet. He can sing the alphabet song, right?
Yeah, like what's her definition of knows the
It
alphabet?
just shows her
Just-
she probably doesn't even know the letters.
No, definitely not. Yeah.
Definitely.
See, think about this. Think about this. This is
No,
this
no,
is
no,
why
no. She
tech-
knows it. She just can't recognize it.
Right. She knows it. She just can't recognize it or read or reply anything or anything like that, but she does know it. That's like someone telling me like they know algebra. And I'm like, okay, like I was having this conversation because I'm working on my I don't get a haircut that often, but when I do, I always go to the same person. So I've been working on this, my hairstylist, to get technically because she has kids, right? And the last time I was there, we were talking about school and so forth, right? And the only reason this got brought up because Max was there, right? And he was saying to her like school was a waste of time and all this stuff. And she was trying to argue with him like, well, no, I mean, because she has her kids in school, right? So he was like, she was like, no, school, that's, you got to have an education. And he was like, well, that's not the only way to have an education, right? And he didn't really know how to handle the objection. So instead of, because like what he'll do, he still has a tendency to just tell the person. He doesn't know how to like totally just sell it. His selling is just like being like persistent, but he doesn't yet know how to like ask the question, tell the story. You know
So
what I
he's
mean?
like,
Yet
he's like Bill Gates in the way
he's really fucking good. It's just when he adds this other part, which is just a developmental point, he'll be really good. Because what most you can learn how to tell the stories and ask questions. It's very difficult for people who are adults who are already fucked up, self-esteem wise, to be persistent and not give a fuck what other people think. Max doesn't give a fuck what other people think, like about telling him no. He doesn't. It's like it's not even like a don't tell me no. It's just like it's like it just goes right past him, doesn't care, right? Anyways, so I started asking her some questions. I was like, you went to school. I was like, do you remember most of what you learned in school? She was like, well, yeah. And I was like, well, like, I mean, like algebra, stuff like that. She's like, yeah, I learned all that stuff. And I was like, okay, so like if I give you like an algebraic equation right now, and she immediately was like, well, I mean, no, I wouldn't know how to do that. And I'm like, okay, well, she was like, but I mean, like the subjects that I liked, I learned those. And I was like, what did you like in school? She's like, I liked history. And I was like, oh, okay. So like if I asked you like, what was the cause of the French Revolution? And she was like, no, I don't think I remember that. But there was like literally nothing that she actually knew from school, even
Just
like
a defense mechanism, right?
and it was cool because
It
I
was
was
like
just
her ego,
opening the
yeah.
point up, right? But it's like yeah, exactly. It's just a defense mechanism of like, no, you go to. It's just like with Idiocracy when they're like, what is the brawn? Why are you giving it to the plant? It has what plants crave. It has electrolytes. It's what plants crave. And you're like, but what is an electrolyte? It's what plants crave, but it's killing the plants. Yeah, but that's why they need more. Like what? Like no, that doesn't make sense. And so you have to really. That's why I've been explaining to Max, like, it's not about convincing a person right away, don't put your kids in school. Like, if you start with that, chances are you're going to lose them, or it's going to take a lot longer. It's more about, if there's a person who's on the fence, obviously you can go that way, but it's more about showing the person, even if your kid is in school, because ultimately that's the parent's choice, whether it's best or not, it is technically their choice, right? if they're using TechnoTutor, at least they're not being limited by school as much as they would otherwise, right? But yeah, it's fascinating, man. Like, you actually, it's so difficult for people to process this. You actually don't learn anything in school. You all you do is waste time. That's why Max always tells everybody it's just a waste of time.
Yeah.
Because like, look what he's doing all day.
Yeah.
And all the stuff you're supposed to learn in
You're
school,
learning.
he knows it. Like, we went to lunch the other day with somebody and he brought like, those study sheets, they're like those laminated, like trifold, like study sheets that just have like random facts on them for some subject or whatever.
Okay.
There's like, they're called
Mhm.
like study sheets or quick reference guides or things like that. You can look them up. There's ones for different subjects, and it'll have just like, for algebra, it's like all the important formulas, like conic sections, and it'll have everything like, summarized, like circle, ellipse, all that stuff, right? He just like carries those around and like reads them.
That's so
Like his
cool.
favorite
In a
one right
little
now is the
briefcase?
periodic table. No, he just like carries them around. Yeah, that'd be kind of funny, have a little briefcase or something. Right? But like he likes the periodic table one, right? And he'll like bring him, and then when he sees people, he'll like ask them stuff about it. Like, why did you think this is that way? Like, he's really fascinated with the fact that there's a little sub chart that shows elements that are essential for life. And it has like the ones that are essential for life highlighted in blue, and then like a little red X on the ones that are actually like, poisonous to life. And he's really fascinated with the fact that like, there's one, I'm trying to remember which one it was, but there's one that it's blue and it has the X. And he's like,
Arsenic.
how is it both? Huh?
Arsenic.
I think it is arsenic. Yeah, it's like both, right? And then also mercury has an X on it. But if you go and look at the properties of the different elements, it says mercury is in dental fillings. And he's like, but it says here that it's, and he came up with this on his own. Like, he made that connection. You see what I mean? So he's not, because when he reads it, it's like, it's in. I got that. Now I'm reading this. Wait a second. But I already know it's poisonous because he saw it when he read it a different time. Like, he's integrated. It's a part now. You don't have to tell him again. And going back to what you were saying earlier, Drake, it's like, when am I going to get I'm going to have to get a third booster and a fourth booster? And like, oh, it's just going to be like the flu. And it's like, the president, right? He has all the boosts, everything, got COVID, went into isolation, tested negative. 2 days later, he's tested positive again with an antigen test. It's like the accurate one. Accurate, you know what I mean? So it's like, he's fully boosted and everything. And they gave him Paxlovid and everything. It's like, oh, wow, how is this? So how, I don't even know why don't they just fucking lie about it? I don't even know why. Maybe they just don't, they know people don't give a shit. Like, people have already chosen sides. So it's really just to get sympathy, or I don't even know.
That's what I'm saying. Is like, people really can't understand. They can't think critically. Like,
They're so
it's-
stuck on the point that's in front of them. They can't bring in all the other information they had. Like, oh yeah, but didn't all these celebrities get the vaccine and then they're all getting COVID? Like, they can't bring that into the moments of you're about to get your new booster. You're like, well,
think about it.
at least
think
I didn't
about
get as sick as I thought I was gonna get. It's like, how did you know how sick you are gonna get on something that's
And maybe you got sick because you got
Like-
it.
no, these are safe and effective. I was told they're safe and effective.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
My
like,
bad.
we've talked about this before, but like, just how like you can't consider it's funny, I have this book like actually right here. But
Exactly. Beginning
you
to read.
can't, yeah, you can't consider even the sentence that you're reading if you're stuck trying to figure out how to pronounce the words, and so like, okay, these kids can't even pronounce the words. Like the word cat, it's only got 3 fucking letters in it. They're just like a. They're not even getting to the 3rd letter. And like, okay, they're not going to be able to understand a sentence with that word in it, with any words in it, right? So how are they supposed to think? Like you're saying, like, okay, you can live with the 99.99% chance, or you can get this booster and have the same chance of living and have risks of everything that comes with that. But they can't bring in all those extra points. They said the answer was booster. So A, It's like it's almost
Yeah.
it's almost like
and
you're-
the emotion. It's like we're because we have all that childhood programming too with the emotions and
Yeah.
wanting to feel like you fit in and not be ostracized. It's like that's
It's like-
like the feeling. It feels good now to get the booster.
Imagine getting a test. Imagine getting a test, and the the question on the test is, "Are you a retard?" And it says correct answer, yes. And you're sitting there and you're just looking at it. You're like, "Am I a retard?" Well, correct answer, yes. I'm bubbling
No,
that
dude.
in.
Yeah, you're stuck on sounding out the word retard. Hey, did you guys hear about? Okay, this is kind of probably obscure, but the WHO just appointed
The who?
no the WHO.
Who?
Keep thinking there's this fucking owl in my office. Max loves that joke, by the way. They just appointed this new person to, I forget what the name of the office or the title of the position is, but it's something like behavioral something like behavioral influence or something like that. It's like this part of the WHO, right? And this
Are
guy
these
was
the
breaking it.
people that are these the people that are like, if you disagree with the WHO, you've got a mental disorder?
Ooh, that's a good idea.
They're
We should
probably
submit
behind
that
it.
to them.
Well, check this out. So the position, it's like someone's filled the position, right? And the person broke down like what that position is about, like that part of the WHO. And it has to do with, so there's this theory, which I had not heard of before. There's this book called Nudge. Have y'all heard of this?
No.
Mitch has. I figured you would. And apparently it's about the theory of like how like a government or an organization doesn't force someone to do something.
Just nudge 'em.
Well, it's like you do all this sort of impulsing that nudges their
Yeah,
free
you engineer
choice
the environment.
into the direction of that thing.
It's just like you were describing with like coronavirus shutting down restaurants. They didn't shut down restaurants. They just made it like very difficult to not. It made it very difficult to operate this way,
Yeah.
right? They handle
yeah.
like the environmental points.
Another one is like, this is what I've always been saying about the trans stuff. It's like, no one's forcing your kid to be trans. It's like, but it's on the TV. The celebrities are doing it. Like, that's why they get celebrities to do, like there's a great story about, if you read the story behind Beats headphones,
Oh yeah.
like how they got them popularized and how everybody wanted them. It's like they would, the agent or the manager or the agent of like an athlete would be like, hey, put these on real quick before you go into that interview, and then so like suddenly all these celebrities are like wearing the Beats headphones, and people are like, and then that was part of an effort of, firstly, it's like suddenly they're everywhere, but it's like self-reinforcing, you know what I mean? Like if it had been someone else's headphones, everybody wearing those, but
Yeah.
whoever developed them had those connections to get all those people in, and there was deals and all this kind of stuff. So people were nudged into it. It's not like they're that great of a headphone. I'm not saying they're terrible, but they're just what they are. So, yes, but this department or whatever in the WHO is it's like the area that specifically focuses on that type of stuff. The person they just put into the office is the person who co-authored that fucking book.
Oh.
Okay. So you can't be like, well, I don't know. That sounds like conspiracy. Like that's not really what it does. Like it's the person who fucking co-authored the book. Okay.
Wow.
And then they were showing how this woman has been a member of the Communist Party in the UK for like 50 years or something or whatever.
No.
And she's even been asked in interviews, and she doesn't deny it. She is a communist. But I watched this one interview where this guy it was like from a year ago. It wasn't even like now, where she has an incentive to deny it. It was like back a year ago. She was like, well, my personal politics have nothing to do with, my recommendations for science and so forth. And it's like, but you work in the organization that is purposely influencing people in a certain way. Okay. Why are they
This is
appointing
so
someone
funny.
to that who
Holy
is an
shit.
actual avowed communist? And also the idea also that you shouldn't let your politics interfere. I don't agree with that. So one, I think she's just being disingenuous, but I'm saying like really your politics, they have to influence things. Because what is she gonna give a recommend? Because that's not a science position. That's an application. You know what I mean? That type of thing. That's not just research. That's like application. There's no way your politics aren't going to influence, because science doesn't tell you what to do.
Yeah.
Dude, who
So-
else in the world is fucking talking at this level? Nobody. Like this group, Self-Perfected, is the only group of people that are making sense of this. And everyone, whatever it takes for you to get that through your head and realize, like, this is the, I don't even want to use the word resistance, right? Because it's not the right word for it, but like, this is the common sense place where we can all fucking read and we're all putting the pieces together. And so
And
this
the pieces
is
are there for
insane.
everybody to see. It's not like this is hidden shit. I'm just on
Yeah.
YouTube, got the same information as everybody
It's just
else.
we just could read and talk, and we have a medium by which we can communicate that and then disseminate the information between us and the clubhouses.
But also it's like the self-honesty required not to put your personal bias on it.
Hmm.
And that applies in all areas of your life, but especially in this, like, man, wouldn't it be nice if it was just law of attraction and that could just raise the vibration? And it's like, okay, so I just put on some robes and I start talking like in a certain way, and like that would be so much easier. Everybody already wants that to be the answer,
Yeah.
but it's not the answer.
Oh,
Unfortunately, it's not that easy. It's like
Mhm.
the problem is generations and generations and generations of children have been and are being dumbed down.
Yes.
So your body is designed to feel good automatically, naturally, just by giving it what it needs. But we're not able to give it what it needs because our food system is fucked. There's so much depression going on right now, in large part just because the food supply has no fucking nutrients in it. And now they're trying to shut that down even more. You guys saw Noah post that thing about the crickets.
yeah.
He was eating some specific off-brand Cheeto type puff chips, and then they get them home and they look at the package
Yeah.
after they've been eating them. They're like, "Oh, no wonder these taste weird. They fucking have crickets in them."
Yeah. It's gross. That's hilarious because
Do you think crickets raise your vibration or lower your vibration?
I mean, they're
Obviously
literally the one
raise.
animal who like, yeah, like they're like vibrating literally. Maybe it's like a
That's so
high pitched
funny.
fucking sound. So maybe that's what it is.
Oh,
I think they're vibrating right at the frequency of love and compassion.
That's it.
If you analyze it, if you do the math, David Hawkins,
It's like
right? Power versus force.
532
I muscle
hertz.
tested it when I ate the crickets, right? And it was like right around 450 to 460.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
So last night is so funny. Not really funny. But last night Asif and I were listening to some Bernard audios, and it's just like exactly what you're talking about. There was one audio, I think it's "If you fall, just know that it was I
It
forget the
existed in you anyways. Yeah.
exactly. It existed in you anyways. In that audio, there's something that Bernard says about how basically what you were just saying, it would be easy to put on robes because that's what everybody wants, right? Everybody wants that to be the answer. But the problem is that the actual solution is so challenging because everything in our society is supporting the deception of man. And so it's so easy to be deceived. Like, yeah, we want, like, it would be really nice if that was the answer. Everybody wants that to be the answer, but that's like
And just play into like deceiving people and do that. It'd be so
Exactly.
much easier. Right?
exactly. And so that's why, like, actually doing the right thing, right? You know, have you ever heard this phrase, like, do the right things long enough, consistently? You ever hear that?
You know what we need to do? We need to redefine that and say do the best things long enough.
Do the best thing. Yeah. But doing the best thing is challenging because you don't usually do the best thing. Like,
Mhm.
Right,
that's
because
why
if you say
we're
do the
here.
right thing long enough consistently, right?
Yeah.
You know, you could become a billionaire building fucking bombs and missiles.
That's right.
As long as you do the right
Mhm.
things consistently. Yeah,
Right.
but where's the principle in that?
Right.
Mhm.
Exactly. Is that who you want to
Is
be?
that best? Right.
Right. Like, oh, I'm the guy who kills or who created the technology to kill billions or whatever. Like,
He knows
you're-
the secrets of creation and manifestation. It's like, really? He's got all the secrets, all of them.
and that's why he's destroying.
Right.
Like, oh, okay. Maybe that's part of, you know, the solution for you too. You need to be destroyed.
The problem too
And
is
anyway,
all of that stuff plays into the idea that there's inequality. It reinforces the inequality. I mean,
yes.
between people, like it makes one person be like the answer who's going to make you feel good. And there's never a point where the person who's at the top says, you know what, you're responsible equally as I am. It's not just like you create your own reality. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that you're equally responsible for co-creating this reality. So
Yes.
unless we're all equal within our realization of who we actually are as life to do what is best for all, then reality is always going to be fucked at some level. And that's going to bubble up and it's going to ripple out and compound and have effects on everybody.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
just feeling good isn't going to fucking do anything. I mean, we should feel good, but it should be the result of what we did, not the means.
Yeah. Yeah. So the best thing would be obviously create a world that's best, right?
That'd be the highest vibration thing, just because in the sense of
The
would
highest
just be the
vibration
best
right
fucking
there,
reality.
right? And
And
yourself.
also, yeah, also though, that doesn't mean, instead of thinking of it as an end result, it's like, what is best at this moment? And how do we get to a point where we have basic things in place where there's not unnecessary suffering? There's not unnecessary harm that's being done. And that's why we always have focused so far on the podcast on everyone having their basic needs met. Because once you do that, things will be at another level. It's like in that story of with the elite class versus the robots or the slaves and so forth. It's like, can we find a way to have our basic needs met where we're not just exploiting each other, where we don't need slaves to do it, and where people still value work, they still value like labor, but the labor is like from yourself as like, this is how I contribute to reality, not I'm just doing some labor to get a couple dollars so that I can survive. I was having this conversation with Max, and yeah, Mitch, we can wrap up. Let me just finish this story and then we can wrap up if you want. I was talking to Max the other day or yesterday, and we were talking about, I think it was in the context of that book actually, right? And I was trying to explain to him why they had this particular solution with robots so that they didn't have to have a slave class. Okay, and I'm not saying that's the total solution, because there was also problems in that they were having in their society anyways, because it was still force. It was still not total self-realization, right? But he was like, I forget what it was he was saying. Oh yeah, but I was trying to explain to him the point of like, when people don't have as much as other people, and it's like it's not just unnecessary jealousy. It's like, this person has a really good life, I have a shit life. There's going to be resentment, and that's going to cause revolt. And then these people tried to solve the problem by just only having robots do all that shit. So I was explaining to him, I was like think about Chick-fil-A, because he knows about Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, do you know? I said, do you know how much a person at Chick-fil-A makes? And he was like, how much money they make? He's like, no. And I said, like roughly $10 an hour. So I said, even if they worked all day, which generally work about 8 hours a day, they would only make $80 the whole day. And I was like, you know how we just had Italian food last night that we went and picked up? He's like, yeah. And I was like, that cost, basically $80, $100, whatever it was, just that one meal. And I was like, a person working at Chick-fil-A would have to work their whole day just to afford that. And how would they even spend time with their family? And I was explaining to him, like, what if they have kids and then they can't be with their kids, and then they can't even give their kid that same meal one day? They have to go to work all day for that. So I was like trying to show him the contrast between how people in that situation have to live versus how we are able to live. And so how we have to solve this problem. So I'm teaching both of them at a very young age, like, yes, there's nothing you can do about it today. And in fact, you're like, well, I'm not going to go to Chick-fil-A then. Well, then that person doesn't even have a job. They're fucked. So it's okay to support the point at the moment, but the purpose of your life has to be, how do we solve this problem here? Because at a certain point, that person is going to resent. And so when you look around at the world, what's going on right now, you start connecting all the dots. What I think you'll see is that it's all being done to force everyone into a position where they're so docile. I mean, this isn't possible, but this is the plan, where everyone's so docile and accepting of the authority that they will never question that top 1%. And then to eventually, as much as possible, replace the population with robots and automation and so forth. But everyone will be so dumbed down. And I mean, think about when everyone has totally accepted this whole mRNA technology, where they can just start altering your genes and switching genes on and off and so forth. And they start figuring out, well, this is what makes a person docile, or this is what makes a person question authority. Or, I mean, I know it doesn't work like that, but that's the idea, right? And they start fucking with everyone's genetics in an attempt to try to keep everybody, right? Because like we were saying, the immigration thing was a way to sort of like dilute the population according to their beliefs. But then so is the mRNA. It's a way of altering all of that stuff. You know, it's funny. I don't know when this happened, but Katie and I started noticing, when you look at like processed foods and stuff, next time you buy some chips or anything like that, just look at the bag. I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, it's going to say made with bioengineered foods. Have y'all noticed this yet? Like, start looking at the back, the wrappers and stuff. Like, they all are saying this now, made with bioengineered products or something like that.
I've
And
seen
so I
that
think- yeah.
before, and I questioned, like, to myself, like, what's the difference between that and GMO? You know?
It's probably just the new level of bad or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They
I don't
just
know.
like
But
they just like renamed it to bioengineered. It's the same thing. It's just like when they renamed aspartame to like, or sucralose or something like that.
oh yeah.
You know what I mean? They just like rebranded
Well, that was smart.
genetically
Because that sounds
modified.
cool, man. Like bioengineering. That's like the mRNA vaccine that I got. That helped me get like not as sick as I might have gotten when I got COVID. And I basically was in the hospital for a week. I'm like fucking Iron Man, dude. I'm like bioengineered.
Iron's bioengineered, yo.
But think about the subconscious impulsing of that to get everyone into like the whole metaverse, fucking all that shit.
Wearable technology.
Why don't you
Oh,
you want to wrap it up for us?
Here's
Okay,
here's what I
go.
wanted to say though. And then Mitch can wrap it up. But this of like, people always talk about, or a lot of people talk about, like the vibration by doing random acts of kindness, right? It's like, why not just your beingness be kindness? You know?
That's like trying to build a business through random acts of lead generation. You're like, okay, I mean, you're gonna get some result here and there, but you're not gonna ever be Walmart. They're not doing random acts of shoppers or something. It's like, it's just fucking matic.
Right, exactly. So that's I just wanted to bring that up because like that's how people treat changing the world or raising their vibration even, is like,
I'm gonna basically accept the system as is, accept myself for who I am, just keep doing what I'm doing on a daily basis normally, and then randomly I'll go and meditate, or I will randomly go and do a cleanse, or I'll go on a retreat, or I'll go get my
pay for somebody at Starbucks behind me. like what the fuck is that gonna do? You know,
it's definitely not going to stop Starbucks from fucking making the bathrooms transgender and all this other shit.
And it's not even kindness, really. It's not. It's just like an idea that you have in your mind of what kindness is. It's kind of like this vague idea of what is light, you know?
Yeah. It's all just vague bullshit.
Exactly.
All right, Mitch, what do you got for us?
Well, what I see from this is raising the vibration of the planet obviously is not just feeling love, right? And creating that internal state. And what I've seen, because I was like heavy into this for a long time. And the biggest switch that I had to make was going from thinking that just if I can feel a certain type of way, that somehow then more money is going to come in my bank account and more opportunities are going to open up. Rather, it's as I've come to understand that it does come down to our programming and our understanding, our ability to read and put things together. to the point of then you can go do the right activity and build systems that then support other people to do the same, and then they act differently and they behave differently. So it is kind of like that nudge, right? There's a reason the World Health Organization has that lady from the Nudge book in that, but it's you systematically nudging yourself and those around you to actually create the best outcomes and prevent any consequence that's not best. And that, right, that is what the raising of our situation would look like, just in the sense of raising it to being like the best outcome all the time and doing that in every moment you can.
Yeah, to add that real quick, like if you think about people thinking raising the vibration, how do you know it's not already there?
Mhm.
Because aren't you evaluating it based on physical circumstances?
Mhm.
Like, well, there's still problems and so forth. It's like, well, let's just solve those problems. Then why do you need to do the vibration raising? Because the belief is, well, if I feel good, then, well, you know what'll happen? I'll just be possessed by feeling good, and it'll just automatically make me do all the things that I need to do.
Mhm.
That's a lack of self-responsibility. That's a lack of self-awareness. That is the problem. You need to develop the self-awareness of what's within you that's so fucked up that you don't know how to do what is best and everyone else doesn't, and change the systems that are not educating everyone effectively so that we just do what is best and we have systems that are best. The raising your vibration part is actually an unnecessary step. It's a euphemism. It doesn't in itself actually mean anything. It's based on a misunderstanding of physics, a misunderstanding of mathematics, and a misunderstanding of how actual reality is built and structured. It's simply develop principles within yourself and don't care so much about how you feel. What were you guys saying?
Yeah.
I was just putting this together. What actually raising your vibration is like expanding your language, right? Which is expanding your LAN, or like the local area network. You're expanding your network, which is like, if you're expanding your network, expanding your net, you're expanding your grasp on reality, right? And then Mitch put a joke that he knows that he just
I
doesn't.
said, I know
recognize
that,
it.
Drake. I just don't recognize
that.
that.
So the problem
Yeah.
the problem is we don't want to lie to people and be like, hey, we're the ones raising the vibration of the planet. We're not. There is no vibration to raise. It's all bullshit. But if you're like, but I want to raise the vibration of the planet, we're just showing you the thing that you actually want, which is an amazing life, feeling great, having amazing relationships, having more money, having more fun, all that stuff that you feel like you're missing, not being depressed, not being uncertain about your purpose, and everyone else having an amazing life. That's what we're here to do. So I can't raise your vibration, but I can show you how to do all that other stuff.
Oh,
Right.
and
raise your vocabulary
and
and your effectiveness.
since you said it so clearly, we don't want to lie people about it. We don't want to deceive people about it. The only way that you're going to be able to do that without being deceived, because everything else in society supports deception, is being the group that is not going to deceive you, that being aligned with the group that wants to do what's actually best, that is doing what's best, right? Because if you're not aligned with that group, it's going to be very easy for you to fall for the deceptions, because everything else is a deception.
And why that works is because everyone has a shared language, so we can all understand the same things, and you can see it for yourself. You don't have to look to a guru for the answer. You can reason it out for yourself.
Exactly.
So with
join
that being said, what?
the best group.
Go ahead.
Join the best group.
Yeah. Join the best group and share this with people, right? I'm sure you have freaking 3 other people in your life that are looking for a better life. So go talk to them. Go share.
It's
the
just a matter of
podcast with them.
impulsing them, nudging them into, hey,
Yeah.
look at this instead. Like, yes, all that stuff you're concerned about, I get it, but there's actual answers, not just hope and all that bullshit. So it's just like nudge into the right.
Yeah, nudge people to
know?
the group. Come on the Friday calls. Share the Friday calls. Right, we're close to breaking 100 on those Friday calls. I'm excited about that.
That's cool.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
So,
See you next week.
Awesome.
sweet.
Bye.
See you next
ya.
week.
Bye.